Nearly 30 flights across India have been impacted by hoax calls just today alone. Security nightmare in the skies. Hoax calls hit 30 flights in 24 hours, nearly 100 hoax bomb threats in 5 days. Hoax calls leading to chaos and disruptions to air travel across the country. 30 flights across the country is said to have been impacted by hoax calls just today alone. My colleague Siddharth Zarabi is getting in more details on that big story. Siddharth, the Indian aviation industry in a complete mess. There's obviously disruption and disturbances at the way airline travel is done. Just give us a sense of how many calls today have been received and what is going on here really.
The number of calls is perhaps best answered by an authoritative statement from the government, which has so far not yet come. But I can tell you, and my colleague Karishma Asudani in Business Today has also been tracking this story, that this is an unprecedented day, an unprecedented week in Indian aviation. More and more Indians of all classes and strata are taking to the skies. And what is happening is plain and simple, and I've been speaking to some insiders from the sector, and they are saying very clearly, this is plain and simple terrorism. While some action and one individual or thereabouts seems to have been picked up, the response from the security establishment is now at the center of this crisis. Calls, emails, or any other manner of social media threats, there is a protocol that the airlines have to follow. And we really don't know how many flights have been impacted today on account of what is now being reported as 30 such calls of various sorts. Perhaps the number of flights may be different because some flights are said to have already landed. But overnight we heard that a Vistara flight from Delhi to London was diverted, and I was speaking earlier today to a passenger on that flight which got diverted to Frankfurt. This is chaos, plain and simple, for Indian aviation. SpiceJet alone is said to have had multiple flights impacted. That airline is already ailing. So while we wait for official word from the airlines, which have been grappling with this crisis for the past 1 week and are probably totting up losses running into crores every day, the real issue is the security response and what perhaps needs to be done to nip this in the bud, because the airlines, beyond putting any confirmed hoax caller on a no-flight list, can't do anything. So the government had said that there was a review meeting earlier this week, but today, Saturday, is very clearly a Black Friday for Indian aviation. Sneha.
All right, Siddharth, I'm going to thank you for the moment for joining in with your perspective. My colleague Karishma Asudani also is with us, and so is Piyush Mishra. A security nightmare for so many passengers, lakhs of them in the country, and this is a huge, huge threat. It impacts airlines negatively, obviously, crores of loss. The financial loss is huge to deal with. Karishma.
Yes, Neha. In fact, we are picking up from highly placed sources and all the aviation analysts that I have been talking to. Roughly it takes about $500,000 just as a fuel cost when you are diverting one flight because of a bomb hoax. And if you're going to add all the other kind of miscellaneous expenses that come in, be it the airport charges, the flight clearance charges, the passengers, the hotel, the new flight arrangement, and the coordination that you have to do with other agencies, especially if you're going to land in a different country, will add up to the cost. Basically, an airline will have to shell on one flight what it usually has to shell on 3 to 4 flights, which is an added burden. And in India, if you look at the balance sheet of the airlines, except Indigo, the airlines are still trying to, of course, buck up, and they're currently in a code red situation. So it's going to be very difficult financially if this continues. Now, one big question is, what has been the motive of these bomb calls coming in? just amidst the festive season, because this is a peak holiday season for India where a lot of people will be traveling. In fact, next week is going to be busy, and there's going to be no room for any arrangements to be made for airlines in case they have to divert one of the flights because of these calls. We are picking up that Ministry of Civil Aviation has been talking to Home Ministry, but a productive solution is yet to come in. Let's also not forget that Indian aviation is completely a market that's driven by private capital, and government actually has a very little role to play. But that does not do away with the fact that they do not ensure safety, since this will not come directly under the purview of the regulator, that is DGCA. It has to be the Ministry of Civil Aviation and Ministry of Home Affairs who will have to take the lead in closing the cap on these calls, because it's going to cost a big on the fact that Diwali is just next week.
Well, absolutely. It's got the airline industry and passengers, also the government, in a complete tizzy. What really is going on at the end of the day, it's a security nightmare. The government saying they don't really know about any sort of a conspiracy, but this is troubling, and that they are going to be doing something about it. But what are they going to do about it is the big question here, isn't it, Piyush? In conversation is a legislation that could be in fact brought in place to deter these pranksters, all of these people who make these hoax calls. What is it that you're picking up?
Well, that's right, Sneha. The government is now mulling to bring a legislation as far as these hoax calls are concerned. Remember that in just 1 week, we have around 50 such calls, which has not only impacted airlines financially, but also is a huge security concern. Though when we spoke to Civil Aviation Minister, he told us that it is not indicating towards any such big conspiracy or terror angle, but some pranksters are involved in this. He has somewhere indicated towards the minors being involved in this in these calls. But at the same time, it has become a huge concern for the government. And remember that these calls, the number of calls have increased at a time when the government has been holding series of meetings with various stakeholders. The government also had briefed Parliamentary Committee on Transport on these issues. But now the number of calls are increasing, which is certainly going to be a big concern for this. Though the top government sources have told us that all the ministries, be it about the Ministry of Home Affairs or Civil Aviation, they are working in tandem to deal with the situation. The government is putting all its efforts so that no financial loss is therefore to the airlines, and such calls can further be stopped. And for the same purpose, we are hearing is that most likely government can amend some rules and regulations, and also likely to bring legislation on this.
What is of real intrigue here, Piyush, is that whether this is being done by a group of people. So is there a conspiracy at large, or is this just the handiwork of a group of pranksters, maybe a couple of pranksters who are functioning independently? What is it that the government is now thinking about this, about the investigations?
As of now, the government is not indicating towards any kind of huge conspiracy or any terror angle in this. The government is now telling us that a few pranksters are involved in this, and most of them are minors. So the serious concern of terror has so far been ruled out by the government. But at the same time, the government is very much concerned and has told us that it is putting all its efforts to stop such cases, and most likely that legislation would be brought in. But what is more concerning here is that the calls have increased, and today itself around 30 flights have been impacted, which is certainly going to create a lot of tensions among these stakeholders. And at the same time, we can expect government to hold a series of meetings to control these situations. What is more important here is that not only today, in the last 1 week, since the time the government was also holding meetings with stakeholders, at the time also these calls were being made. We'll have to wait and watch how the government is now further going to control this, and what kind of steps government will further take.
Also, Piyush, just tell us a little about this. Because the calls were routed through VPNs, obviously complicating the investigation process, are the authorities reading a little more into this?
Well, as far as authorities are concerned, remember, Sneha, that in Mumbai also a case was registered. In Delhi also, various cases have been registered. Delhi police has told us that illegal actions have been initiated against few hoax callers, those were identified. So the government is putting all its efforts as far as controlling this is concerned, but the cases have increased in just one day, which means today around 30 flights were impacted, which is certainly going to create more concern for the security agencies. We'll have to see how the government is further looking forward to control this. But authorities are telling us that legal actions will be initiated and perpetrators will not be spared as far as these cases are concerned.
New legislation to penalize hoax callers and placing them on a no-fly list. That really is on the agenda, Piyush. What more can you tell us about that?
Well, in the upcoming winter session, we can expect a new legislation to deal with the situation. Moreover, what we are also learning is that there could be some amendments in rules and regulations. These callers might be put in a no-fly list for at least 5 years. This is what the government has so far suggested. But looking at the cases, those are now increasing, and the phone calls, those are being received, the threat calls, those are being received by the airlines. We can expect more harsh decisions taken by the government. So in a day or two, we will see a series of meetings, and then we can expect some sort of decisions taken by the government. But not only legislation, but also few harsh decisions and amendment of rules are there in the mind of proper government functioning.
Extremely worrying. The challenge is that how to then prevent the disruptions or minimize the disruptions. That really is the challenge. Piyush, I'm going to leave it at that for the moment. Piyush Mishra getting in those details. Karishma and Siddharth with their perspective on that story as well.